Today, we're breaking down a really tense situation that's been unfolding in the Gulf, a series of attacks on a major airbase in Saudi Arabia. We're pulling from reports by the Associated Press and the Wall Street Journal, and frankly, they paint a pretty concerning picture.
So let's just jump right in with the most important number you need to know from this past week. More than 24. That's how many U.S. troops have been wounded.
And where did this happen? It all went down during a series of attacks on Saudi Arabia's Prince Sultan Air Base, with sources pointing the finger at Iran. Okay, so let's get into the details of what exactly happened here.
We're going to start with the biggest and most recent incident, which happened just this past Friday.
The target, as we said, was Prince Sultan Air Base, and to give you a little context on how important this place is, it's located just 96 kilometers, that's about 60 miles, from Riyadh, the Saudi capital. So, yeah, it's a pretty critical spot, not just for the Royal Saudi Air Force, but for the U.S. troops stationed there too.
And what's really staggering here is the sheer amount of firepower used in this one attack on Friday. We're talking about a barrage of 6 ballistic missiles and a whole swarm of 29 drones, all directed at the base. That's a lot.
And the impact? Well, it was serious. That one strike injured at least 15 U.S. troops. 5 of them were hurt badly. According to the Wall Street Journal, these soldiers were actually inside a building when it got hit. And on top of the human cost, several of those big aerial refueling planes were also damaged.
But here's the thing. Friday's attack didn't just come out of nowhere. It was actually the peak of a really tense week. And when you look at the timeline, you can see a clear pattern of things getting worse and fast.
So, reports show that earlier in that same week, there was an initial strike that had already wounded 14 U.S. service members. Then came Friday's much bigger assault, adding another 15 to that list. So you see, in the span of just 1 week, the total number of American troops hurt in these attacks climbed to over 24.
Now, to really understand what's going on with these military strikes, you kind of have to zoom out and look at the bigger geopolitical picture. And honestly, what you see are some really conflicting signals, especially on the diplomatic front.
For example, right before all this happened, U.S. President Donald Trump was on the record saying that talks to end the wider conflict were going very well. You know, a pretty optimistic message suggesting maybe things were cooling down.
And yet, and this is the crazy part, the biggest attack, the one with all the missiles and drones we just talked about, happened after the president made that statement. The timing here is just impossible to ignore. It's like diplomacy is being discussed in public while things are seriously heating up on the ground.
And then you have to add another layer of tension to all this, the Strait of Hormuz. It's one of the most critical spots in the world for shipping oil. President Trump had apparently given Tehran a deadline of April 6 to reopen it, which, just puts another ticking clock on this whole situation.
And the story doesn't even stop in Saudi Arabia. Over that same weekend, there was this whole flurry of claims and counterclaims popping up all over the region, which just makes the whole picture even more complicated.
So get this, Iran's military claims it hit and destroyed a Ukrainian anti-drone system depot over in Dubai, saying it was helping U.S. forces. Okay, but on that very same day, Ukraine's president was visiting the UAE, and the two countries announced a new deal to cooperate on defense. It's like you have these two totally different stories playing out at the exact same time.
And to top it all off, Iran's Revolutionary Guards also put out a claim. They said they found and dismantled over 120 unexploded cluster bombs, alleging they were dropped in past U.S. and Israeli attacks.
So all of this brings us to the big question, right? On one hand, you have public statements that talks are going very well. On the other, you have direct, escalating military attacks. It creates this huge tension. So with high-stakes diplomacy happening at the same time as these military strikes, you just have to wonder, what signal is actually being sent here?